Holy cow, are my eyes deceiving me? That looks like the new heart for Big Red. After almost a year of waiting, the short block is finally done. If there's one thing that I have learned from all of this, it's that custom parts always take much longer than expected. So what was the delay, you ask? Well, it was the custom pistons we had made. We didn't want to rush the design process because the pistons are an integral part in how an engine operates. For the final design, we settled on Worsner 4032 pistons. We went with these pistons for longevity. To reduce our chances of detonation when we start throwing boost at this engine, we also went with a piston design that will lower the compression ratio to 8.5 to 1. Once the piston design was complete, it took almost 7 months to go from a CAD drawing to an actual piston in your hand, and we couldn't ship the block without the pistons. Once the pistons were physically in our hand, we sent them along with the block to the plater. This is where the plater will nickel-seal the cylinders and set the clearances between the piston and cylinder wall. So far I'm really happy with how things are turning out, but we have a long road ahead, so let's get to work. First thing we have to do is install the oil pickup. If you have a gasket kit from Victor Rines, do not use the oil pickup seal included in their kit, as it will not seal correctly. In order to get the correct seal, I had to order one from Porsche. The oil pickup is now installed. Now time to install the oil pan. I like the factory quart gasket, so I'm going to stick with it. When these quart gaskets are installed correctly, they can last for a very long time, but care must be taken. I think the key to longevity is making sure a thread locker is used on all of the bolts and to evenly torque them. When I was torquing my oil pan bolts, I started at the center and worked my way out. I'm now ready to install the cylinder heads. I just finished installing the 3 pin locators which are located on each side of the engine. These pin locators keep the head gasket in place and perfectly aligned when installing the cylinder head. Now that the head gasket is in place, it's time to install my freshly rebuilt cylinder head. Porsche recommends you install the cylinder head washers dry and lubricate the nuts with motor oil. Here I'm lubricating all of the nuts and hand tightening them. When it comes to torquing down the nuts for the cylinder head, I decided to use the 15 followed by 2 90-degree rotations of the nut, with an hour wait in between each pass. This method goes against Porsche's recommendation of 15 followed by 3 series of 90-degree rotations. But after talking with a few engine builders that I respect, they told me that if I'm using brand new gold yellow studs along with new bolts, that the 15 followed by 2 series of 90-degree rotations is the correct method to use. He told me Porsche uses a different material on the new gold yellow studs, and if you actually do a third 90-degree rotation on them, you will stretch the stud and it will be necked down below the top. I decided to follow his advice, since he's built a lot more 928 engines than me. Here I'm torquing each nut to 15 foot-pounds. It's very important that you follow the correct sequence when torquing each nut. Before I do my 2 series of 90-degree angle passes, I use a marker to mark the location of the nut and stud at the 12 o'clock position. After the first 90-degree rotation, the nut will be at the 3 o'clock position. After the second 90-degree rotation, the nut will be at the 6 o'clock position. The washer and stud should never move during the torque angle process. After the first pass, the nut is now at the 3 o'clock position. After the second pass, the nuts are now at the 6 o'clock position. The cylinder heads are officially installed. Unfortunately, I won't be able to install the cams today, as I'm waiting on the new cam tensioners from Germany. I'm being told the parts won't arrive for almost 2 months. While I wait for the parts, there is still plenty to do, like finishing up the wiring harness. Here's my front engine harness that I've been working on. The harness is almost complete. I went a little overkill on the front engine harness, but I wanted to make sure it lasted for the life of the vehicle. The orange fire sleeve, it has an operating temp of 500 degrees, and the black shrink wrap is race and aviation spec and has an operating temp of 302 degrees. The problem I'm having is the connector I ordered for the jump post is too wide and needs to be trimmed down. This is an easy fix with the grinder. Like a glove. The harness is now done. In the next video, we'll work on removing the front suspension from my 928S4 donor car. I'll send the suspension parts from this car off to be rebuilt. We will need the front suspension from this S4 in order to fit these big fat brakes to Big Red. See you guys next time.